Here are 20 of the richest people of all time, and their insane fortunes will blow your mind. For most of us, the end of the month marks the moment that we get our paychecks from work. Once our accounts replenish, we might feel pretty rich, even if it's just momentarily. So, it will probably be shocking to discover the amount that these 20 men managed to earn in their time. Let's just say, you'd probably forget about that monthly paycheck with billions or trillions in the bank. 20 John D. Rockefeller. Many teenagers get part-time jobs, perhaps to save for college or pay for their first car. But John D. Rockefeller, who became an assistant bookkeeper at just 16, managed to kickstart his future career in business. By age 20 he was involved in a number of business ventures, eventually narrowing his focus to oil refining and establishing the Standard Oil Company in 1870. Rockefeller struck gold by starting his company when he did. Kerosene and gas became vital elements in the American lifestyle, whether it was to light lamps or fuel cars. By September 29, 1916, Rockefeller was credited as the first ever individual to rack up a worth of $1 billion. And by the time he died in 1937, Rockefeller was worth somewhere between $300 and $400 billion, a figure adjusted with modern inflation rates. 19 Jeff Bezos. Princeton graduate Jeff Bezos decided in 1993 that he wanted to start an online bookstore. So, while on a trip from New York City to Seattle, he drew up a business plan. He warned investors, including his parents, who reportedly gave him $300,000, that his business had a 70% chance of going bankrupt or otherwise failing. That business was Amazon, and Bezos didn't go bankrupt. He went on to become the world's richest living man. As of 2019, he has topped the Forbes list of the world's billionaires with $131 billion in his pocket. And that figure is $19 billion more than the fortune that saw him top the same list in 2018. 18 John Jacob Astor. Born in Germany, John Jacob Astor moved to America after the Revolutionary War and became the country's first multimillionaire. Astor's fortune came from his monopoly in the fur trade, but by 1830 interest in fur had waned. So he changed course and started investing in real estate in New York City. Astor had racked up $20 million by the time he died, a figure equivalent to around $168 billion today. But he couldn't have gotten that far without his wife Sarah Cox Todd, who initially only brought a mere $300 to their union. However, she had great business judgment, according to her husband. In fact, he claimed that she helped with his company because she had better sense than the majority of merchants. 17 Jacob Fugger. Jacob Fugger didn't become Europe's richest man in the early 1500s by investing his time and energy into a single industry. He and his family made the majority of their wealth from the textile trade, but Fugger's brothers also began dabbling in banking. Their company additionally delved into the mining trade, pulling silver, copper, quicksilver, and cinnabar from the earth. Eventually, Fugger earned the nickname Jacob the Rich, and deservedly so. His family's business helped him build a personal net worth of approximately $277 billion in today's money. Fugger used his affluence to influence continental politics. He even bankrolled the campaigns of both Maximilian I and Spanish King Charles V, both of whom became Holy Roman Emperor. 16 Augustus. Augustus served as the first emperor of the Roman Empire, leading his people from 27 BC until he died in 14 AD. During that time, he cemented his place in history as an effective yet peaceful leader. Many actually refer to his time in charge as Pax Romana, which is Latin for Roman peace. This is because of the relative calm he brought to his empire. While he reigned over Rome, Augustus drew his fortune directly from the empire's economy. About 20% of that money went into the emperor's pocket. He also had a sprawling territory, even ruling over all of Egypt at one point. Therefore, at his peak it's estimated Augustus would have been worth about an eye-watering $4.63 trillion in today's money. 15. Richard FitzAlan, 10th Earl of Arundel. Richard FitzAlan held many different titles. As a nobleman, he was the 10th Earl of Arundel and 8th Earl of Surrey. In 1345 he became the Admiral of the Western Fleet in the midst of his storied medieval military career. He was also twice a husband and a father to at least 7 children. FitzAlan died in January of 1376 after spending his lifetime accruing a £60,000 all-cash fortune, an impressive sum for the 14th century. In fact, was enough of an inheritance for his sons, the future Earls of Arundel, to also make lists as the sum of the world's most wealthiest men ever. Today, FitzAlan's savings would be worth about $108 billion. 14. Bill Gates. Bill Gates got into Harvard, but he didn't stay long. Instead, he decided to drop out and start his own business. That business would be Microsoft, which is now the biggest PC software enterprise in the world. Gates served as Microsoft CEO until January of 2000, although he still provides advice to those running the company now. Between 1995 and 2017, Gates held the #1 spot on Forbes' list of the world's richest people in all but 4 of those years. As of March of 2019, his net worth has reached $98.4 billion. And amazingly, he has already donated a staggering $35.8 billion in his Microsoft stock to his and his wife's eponymous charitable foundation. 13. Hessian quickly rose the ranks as an official of the Qing dynasty that ruled over China, as the Qianlong Emperor took a shine to him. He jumped from Vice President of the Ministry of Revenue to Grand Counselor, before then being made Minister of the Imperial Household Department. He even received the right to ride around the imperial palace grounds known as the Forbidden City on a horse. This was an honor typically bestowed on Imperial China's most high-ranking elderly officials. It turned out that from his various imperial posts, Hessian had been able to siphon tax revenues into his personal accounts. By 1799 and the time of his death, it came to light just how corrupt Hessian had become. It seems he had managed to squirrel away a personal fortune that would be worth some $132 billion nowadays. 12. Warren Buffett. As a kid, Warren Buffett had his interest piqued in a typical subject for someone of his age, investing. At 19 he graduated from the University of Nebraska, before studying at Columbia Business School and then enrolling at the New York Institute of Finance. Since 1970 he has made a mountain of cash through investments as the CEO and chairman of Berkshire Hathaway. Buffett stands as the 3rd richest man in the world, just behind Bezos and Gates on the 2019 Forbes list. He has saved up an impressive $63.9 billion, but he's also well known for living frugally in spite of his extra cushy bank account. He has also promised to give away 99% of his fortune, funneling funds to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. 11. Emperor Shenzong of Song. From 1067 to 1085, Emperor Shenzong of Song ruled over China as the 6th leader of the Song dynasty. He employed statesman and economist Wang Engshi as his chancellor, a pivotal choice during his reign. Wang's policies helped Chinese peasants and those out of work. In fact, some even consider Song's China to be the predecessor of the modern welfare state. As the Emperor of China, Shenzong of Song controlled 30% of the world's gross domestic product during his reign. So essentially he had a net worth of more than $30 trillion while he ruled over his empire. And although he did collect taxes from his people, he also helped them. In fact, his period in charge is often called the Peaceful Prosperity Era because of this. 10. Cornelius Vanderbilt. Cornelius Vanderbilt didn't have all that much while growing up and he never got a great education. But he still worked his way up the corporate ladder to hold leadership roles within the inland water trade. He then parlayed his earnings into the railroad industry, eventually becoming the owner of the New York Central Railroad. Vanderbilt remains not only one of the wealthiest Americans ever, but one of the richest men to have ever lived. Adjusted with today's inflation rates, he grew his net worth to approximately $185 billion before he died in 1877. He and his family used their money and influence for some good. He provided the funding to found Nashville's Vanderbilt University, for one. 9. Musa Musa I of Mali. The word Musa means sultan, emperor or conqueror in English. Musa I of Mali was the 10th person to hold the title from the years 1312 to 1337. He reigned over the Mali Empire's expansive territory, which today would have encompassed Mali and a southern stretch of Mauritania. The BBC once described Musa Musa I of Mali as the richest man of all time. The land over which he ruled just so happened to contain half of the world's entire supply of gold. He traded it with merchants as far away as Egypt and Italy, racking up a fortune estimated to be about $415 billion in today's dollars. 8. Andrew Carnegie. As the saying goes, strike while the iron's hot. Andrew Carnegie must have heard that somewhere, because he invested in the American steel industry just as it started to boom. But he didn't just live out his life as a steel industry magnate, he was a passionate philanthropist who encouraged other rich people to give back, too. Of course, Carnegie didn't just implore others to give, he showed them how. In just under 2 decades, he donated an astounding $350 million of his fortune to universities, charities, and other do-good foundations. That figure represented about 90% of Carnegie's money, which would have been valued at about $309 billion today. 7. Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. History doesn't remember Tsar Nicholas II of Russia in a good light. Instead, he earned nicknames like Bloody Nicholas and Vile Nicholas because of the often violent acts he undertook in power. His reign ended in a similar fashion, after the Russian people revolted in 1917. Nicholas and his family were executed in 1918. Much political unrest in Russia came from Tsar Nicholas II's policies. Namely, the working class suffered from terrible conditions for work and poor treatment from the upper classes. Meanwhile, the Tsar seemingly made no effort to redistribute his wealth to help his subjects. Instead, his personal fortune tallied up to some $300 billion. 6. King Solomon of Israel. The Hebrew Bible, Quran, Old Testament and Hadiths all contain stories of King Solomon of Israel, who took the throne after his father King David. Solomon's reign is thought to have lasted from 970 to 931 BC. And according to all of the holy books, he ruled over Israel with great wisdom. King Solomon racked up unbelievable wealth as Israel's monarch. For starters, legend has it that he earned 25 tons of gold per year of his nearly 4-decade reign. This alone would be worth billions today, but he further added to his fortune through taxes and trade money. Therefore, some estimate that he would have been worth $2.2 trillion in the present day. 5. William the Conqueror. William the Conqueror became Duke of Normandy in 1035, but he wanted to make a land grab for England. However, he had to first of all wait until his control of Normandy was safe, before finally going for England. In 1066 he became the first ever Norman to act as King of England, the last foreign invader to take the English crown. The rest of William the Conqueror's reign was spent trying to maintain control of the throne he had nabbed. But he did also find the time to build some castles, reconfigure the English clergy and bring Norman nobility to England. He also amassed a fortune valued at $209 billion today. For Osman Ali Khan, His Exalted Highness Osman Ali Khan, the Nizam of Hyderabad, ruled over his princely state from 1911 until India annexed it in 1948. During that time, he made a myriad of additions to the state's capital city. These include a university, a hospital, and government buildings still in use today. While he served as the absolute leader of Hyderabad, some believed that Osman Ali Khan was also the world's richest man. And even after the Indian government annexed his state and seized the majority of his belongings, he still had $1 billion to his name. At his peak, though, His Exalted Highness was likely worth a staggering $230 billion, as adjusted for inflation. While he served as the absolute leader of Hyderabad, some believed that Osman Ali Khan was also the world's richest man. And even after the Indian government annexed his state and seized the majority of his belongings, he still had $1 billion to his name. At his peak, though, His Exalted Highness was likely worth a staggering $230 billion, as adjusted for inflation. 3. Henry Ford. It's a common misconception that Henry Ford invented the automobile or the assembly line. He actually just utilized the latter to make automobiles more affordable for numerous Americans. The Model T changed the face of transportation in America, of course. But Ford also revolutionized the business world, churning out an affordable product while still paying his workers a good wage. In recent years, the Ford Motor Company has had its fair share of ups and downs, thanks in part to an ever-changing market for automobiles. But during the founding Ford's tenure, the business was wildly successful. As such, Ford himself raked in a personal fortune valued at around $200 billion today. 2. Muammar Gaddafi. As a member of the Libyan military, Muammar Gaddafi defected and formed his own cell, overthrowing the country's monarch in 1969. With that, he became the figurehead of Libyan politics for the next 4 decades. Some lauded him for his anti-imperialist beliefs and the improvements he brought to his people's day-to-day lives. Others condemned him as a dictator who violated human rights and funded terrorism around the world. While in power, Gaddafi nationalized Libya's oil reserves, which boosted state revenues. As it turned out, though, he had also schemed some of this money from the top. In 2011, the year that Gaddafi died, officials revealed that the former leader had funneled Libyan funds into secret accounts, real estate deals and sketchy investments. Altogether, it equaled a hidden fortune of about $212 billion. 1. Genghis Khan. As the first ruler of the Mongol Empire, Genghis Khan laid the foundation for what would become the largest contiguous land empire ever. He did this by bringing together nomadic tribes dotting Northeast Asia. Together, they conquered most of Eurasia in Genghis Khan's punishing way. Many consider him a genocidal leader because of his brutality. The vast expanse of territory conquered by Genghis Khan would have given him a tremendous amount of wealth today. During his reign, he acquired a staggering 12 million square miles. No ruler in history has ever led such a successful land grab. And in this day and age, all that space would be worth hundreds of trillions of dollars. Thank you for watching.